I would like to return back to emphasize the following statements. Planning as a function is the responsibility of top manager. The job of top managers is thinking. So, to make decisions. That's why decisions making one is the one of the items of planning. Decision making is mental process, thinking process, brainstorming process. It is a process of selecting one best alternative for doing a work. Thus, it is a particular course of action chosen by a decision maker as the most effective alternative for achieving his goals. According to McFarland, a decision is an act of choice wherein an executive forms of conclusion about what must be done in a given situation. A decision represents a course of behavior chosen from a number of possible alternatives. In the words of Hans and Massey, a decision is a course of action which is consciously chosen for achieving a desired results. So, decision making process is a thinking process, decisive character is about the mental effort or the concept of decision making. Decision making and problem solving are basic ingredients of managerial leadership more than anything else. The ability to make sound, timely decisions separates a successful manager from an unsuccessful. It is responsibility of manager to make high quality decisions that are accepted and executed in a timely fashion. On the face of it, the decisions should be cohesive, conjectural, contingent, flexible, improved, influencing, initial, non-judgmental, objective, operational one. One of the most important functions of manager is to take decision. Whatever a manager does, he does through decision making. So step 1 of the application of manager's job is to take decision. So whatever a manager does, he does it through decision making. Each managerial decision is concerned with the process of decision making. It is because of this pervasiveness of decision making that Professor Herbert Simon has said the process of managing as a process of decision making. According to him, a right of decision making is attached to it. As a matter of fact, it is the scope of executive activities in a business organization. Hence, decision making is a typical form of planning. It involves choosing the best alternative among various alternatives in order to realize certain objectives. A decision represents a judgment, a final word, and resolution of conflicts or a commitment to act in certain manner in the given set of circumstances. It is really a mental exercise which decide what to do. Leaders must be able to reason under the most critical condition and decide quickly what action to take. If they delay or avoid making a decision, this indecisiveness may create hesitancy, loss of confidence, and confusion with unit, and may cause the task to fail. Since leaders are frequently faced with unexpected circumstances, it is important to be flexible. Leaders must be able to react promptly to each situation. Then, when circumstances dictate a change in plans, prompt reaction builds confidence in them. Characteristics of decision making. The essential characteristics of decision making are: it is a process of choosing a course of action from among the alternative courses of action. This is the main characteristic of decision making. To choose an optimal alternative among various alternatives, to apply it in course of action. The second characteristics, it is a human process. Decision making is a human process involving to great extent the application of intellectual abilities. In this manner, decision making reflects the The conceptual skills of manager. Please engage this set. Decision making is an item of planning. The responsibility of planning belongs to top management. Top management has a conceptual view, or this conceptual view creates intellectual abilities. Number 3, it is the end process preceded by deliberation and reasoning. This also, it is an intellectual ability. It is the end process preceded by deliberation and reasoning. It is always related to the environment. The best manager is that manager who doesn't avoid the environment. A manager may take one decision in a particular set of circumstances and another in a different set of circumstances. So, decision making depends on actual circumstances. The one circumstance need special decision, while another circumstance requires different decision. So the decision making is depending upon a particular situation. Number 5, decision making involves a time dimension and a time lag. So you have to avoid a time lag, because one of the main characteristic of decisions is this decision should be accurate, realistic, and time. So each manager should determine the time of decision. You have to determine the range of time of decision to apply the decision, because may time change the environment of circumstances. It always has a purpose, goals, objectives. Keeping this in view, there may just be a decision not to decide. It involves all actions like defining a problem and probing and analyzing the various alternatives which take place before a final choice is made. So, manager have to screen out various alternatives and to record a certain criteria to choose the optimal alternative. The validity of decision making, the successful of decision making depends on the alternative chosen. Successful of alternatives, the optimal alternative leads to optimal application of decision making. These are the 7 characteristics of decision making. The process of choosing a course of action from among the alternative courses of action. It is a human process. It is the end process preceded by deliberation and reasoning. It is always related to the environment. It involves a time dimension. It always has a purpose. It involves all actions like defining the problem and analyzing the various alternatives which take place before a final choice is made. Significance or importance of decision making. As a leader, you will make decisions involving not only yourself but the moral and welfare of others. Some decisions, such as when to take a break or where to hold a meeting, are simple decisions which have little effect on others. Other decisions are often more complex and may have a significant impact on many people. Therefore, having a decision-making, problem-solving process can be a helpful tool. Such a process can help you to solve these different types of situations. Within business and the military today, leaders at all levels use some forms of a decision-making, problem-solving process. There are several different approaches or models for decision making and problem solving. It is beyond doubt that decision making is an essential part of every function of management. According to Drucker, whatever a manager does, he does through decision making. Decision making lies deeply embedded in the process of management spreads over all the managerial functions and covers all the areas of the organization. Management and decision making are bound up and go side by side in every activity performed by managers, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Every manager makes decision. Right from day when the size of organization used to be very small to the present day huge or mega size of the organization, the importance of decision making has been there. The significant difference is that in today's complex organization, the decision making is getting more and more complex. Whatever manager does he does through making decisions. Some of decisions are of a routine and repetitive in nature, and it might be that the manager does not realize that he is taking decisions, whereas other decisions which are of strategic nature may require a lot of systematic and scientific analysis. The fact remains that management is always a decision-making process. The most outstanding quality of successful manager is ability to make sound and effective decisions. A manager has to make up mind quickly on certain matters. It is not correct to say that he has to make spew of the moment decisions all the time. For taking many decisions, he gets enough time for careful fact finding, analysis of alternatives, and choice of the best alternative. Decision making is a human process. When one decides, he chooses a course alternative which he thinks is the best. Decision making is a proper blend of thinking, deciding, and action. An important executive decision is only one event in the process which requires a succession of activities and routine decisions all along the way. Decisions also have a time dimension and a time lag. A manager takes time to collect facts and to weigh various alternatives. Moreover, after decides, takes still more time to carry out a decision, and often it takes longer before he can judge whether the decision was good or bad. It is also very difficult to isolate the effects of any single decision. Decision making process. The following procedure should be followed in arriving at a correct decision. Setting objectives, defining the problem, analyzing the problem, developing alternatives, select the best alternative. Let's see what stands behind this. Setting objectives. Rational decision making involves concrete objectives. That's correct. So the first step in decision making is to know one's objectives. An objective is an expected outcome of future actions. So before deciding upon the future course of efforts, it is necessary to know beforehand what we are trying to achieve. It's about the determination of objectives. You need to determine the objective. Exact knowledge of goals and objectives bring purpose in planning and harmony in effort. Moreover, objectives are the criteria by which final outcome is to be measured. Defining the problem. It is true to a large extent that a problem will define is half solved. A lot of bad decisions are made because the person making the decision does not have a good grasp of the problem. So we need to define problem exactly. It is essential for the decision makers to find and define the problem before he takes any decision. First, identifies the problem. Next, defines the problem. You can't define the problem unless you identify it. Sufficient time and energy should be spent on defining the problem, as it is not always easy to define the problem and to see the fundamental thing that is causing the trouble and that needs correction. Practically, no problem ever presents itself in a manner that an immediate decision may be taken. It is therefore essential to define the problem before any action is taken. Otherwise, the manager will answer the wrong question rather than the core problem. Clear definition of the problem is very important, as the right answer can be found only through right question. Analyzing the problem. After defining the problem, the next step in decision making is analyzing it. The problem should be thoroughly analyzed to find out adequate background information and data relating to the situation. The problem should be divided into many sub-problems. and each element of the problem must be investigated thoroughly and systematically. There can be a number of factors involved with any problem, some of which are pretended and others are remote. These pertinent factors should be discussed in depth. It will save time as well as money and effort. In order to classify any problem, we require lot information. So long as the required information is not available, any classification would be misleading. This will also have an adverse impact on the quality of the decision. Trying to analyze without facts is like guessing direction at a crossing without reading the highway signboard. Thus, collection of right type of information is very important in decision making. It would not be an exaggeration to say that a decision is as good as the information on which it is based. Collection of facts and figures also requires certain decisions on the part of manager. He must decide what type of information he requires and how he can obtain this. Number 4, developing alternatives. After defining and analyzing the problem, the next step in decision making process is the development of alternative courses of action. Without resorting to the process of developing alternative, a manager is likely to be guided by his limited imagination. It is rare for alternatives to be lacking for any course of action. But sometimes a manager assumes that there is only one way of doing a thing. In such a case, what the manager has probably not done is to force himself to consider other alternatives. Unless he does so, he cannot reach the decision which is the best possible. From this can be derived a key planning principle which may be termed as the principle of alternative. Alternatives exist for every decision problem. Effective planning involves a search for the alternative towards the desired goals. Once the manager starts developing alternative, various assumptions come to his mind which he can bring to the conscious level. Nevertheless, development of alternative cannot provide a person with imagination, which he lacks. But most of us have definitely more imagination than we generally use. It should also be noted that development of alternative is no guarantee of finding the best possible decision, but certainly helps in weighting one alternative against other, and thus minimizing uncertainties. While developing alternative, the principle of limiting factors has to be taken care of. A limiting factor is one which stands in the way of accomplishing the desired goals. It is a key factor in decision making. If such factors are properly identified, manager can confine his search for an alternative to those which will overcome the limiting factors. In choosing from among alternatives, the more an individual can recognize those factors which are limiting or critical to those attainment of the desired goals, the more clearly and accurately he or she can select the most favorable alternatives. There are various ways to evaluate alternatives. The most common method is through intuition. Choosing a solution that seems to be good at that time. There is an inherent danger in this process because a manager intuition may be wrong on several occasions. The second way to choose the best alternative is to weigh the consequences of one against those of the others. Peter Drucker has laid down 4 criteria in order to weigh the consequences of various alternatives. These criteria include risk, economy of effort, situation or timing, limitation of resources, implementing the decision, follow up the decisions, seven criteria to choose the optimal decision, or factors actually. These criteria which weight balance the consequences of various alternatives. So this criteria to measure the impact of decision application. Number 1 is risk. A manager should weigh the risk of each course of action against the expected gains. As a matter of fact, risks are involved in all solutions. What matters is intensity of different types of risk in various solutions. Number 2, second criteria is economy of effort. The best manager is the one who can mobilize the resources for the achievement of results with the minimum of effort. The decision to be chosen should ensure the maximum possible economy of effort. money and time. So economizing problem. Situation or timing. The choice of a course of an action will depend upon the situation prevailing at a particular point of time. If the situation has great urgency, the preferable course of action is the one that alarms the organization that something important is happening. If a long and consistent effort is needed, a slow start gathers momentum approach may be preferable. Limitation of resources. In choosing among the alternatives, primary attention must be given to those factors that are limiting or strategic to the decision involved. The search for limiting factors in decision making should be never-ending process. Discovery of the limiting factor lays at the basis of selection from the alternatives and hence of planning and decision making. There are three phases which should be followed for the selection of alternative, and these are experience, experimentation, and research and analysis, which are discussed below. In making a choice, a manager is influenced to a great extent by his past experience. He can give more reliance to past experience in case of routine decisions, but in case of strategic decision, he should not rely fully on his past experience to reach at a rational decision. Under experimentation, the manager tests the solution under actual or simulated condition. This approach has proved to be of considerable help in many cases in test marketing of a new product, but it is not always possible to put this technique into practice because it is very expensive. Research and analysis is considered to be the most effective technique of selecting among alternatives. Where a major decision is involved, it involves a search for relationship among the more critical variables, constraints, and premises that bear upon the goal item. See limitation implementing the decision. Implementing decision. The choice of an alternative will not serve any purpose if it is not put into practice. The manager is not only concerned with taking a decision, but also with its implementation. He should try to ensure that systematic steps are taken to implement the decision. The main problem which the manager may face at the implementation stage is resistance by the subordinates who are affected by the decision. If the manager is unable to overcome this resistance, the energy and efforts consumed in decision making will go waste. In order to make the decision acceptable, it is necessary for the manager to make the people understand what the decision involves, what is expected to them, and what they should expect from the management. In order to make the subordinates committed to the decision, it is essential that they should be allowed to participate in decision making process. Committee in the form of democratic organization. The managers who discuss problems with their subordinates and give them opportunities to ask questions and make suggestions find more support for their decision than the managers who don't let the subordinates participate. The area where the subordinates should participate is the development of alternatives. They should be encouraged to suggest alternatives. This may bring to surface certain alternatives which may not be thought of by the manager. Moreover, they will feel attached to the decision. At the same time, there is also a danger that a group decision may be poorer than the one-man decision. Group participation does not necessarily improve the quality of decision, but sometimes impairs it. Someone had described group decision like a train in which every passenger has a brake. It has also been pointed out that all employees are unable to participate in decision making. Nevertheless, it is desirable if a manager consults his subordinates while making decisions. Follow up the decisions. Kent Keller has emphatically written in his book that it is always better to check the result after putting the decision into practice. He has given reasons for the following up of decisions, and they are as follow. If the decision is a good one will know what to do if faced with the same problem again. If the decision is a bad one will know what not to do the next time. If the decision is bad and one follows up soon enough, corrective action may still be possible. In order to achieve proper follow-up, the management should devise an efficient system of feedback information. This information will be very useful in taking the corrective measures and in taking right decision in the future. Okay, decisions have been classified by various writers or authorities in various ways. The main types of decisions are as follows: programmed and non-programmed decision, basic and routine decisions, also policy and operative decisions, individual and group decisions. 4 type of decisions. Let's firstly check the two program and non-program decisions, basic and routine decision. Right. The program and non-program decision. Professor Simon has classified all manager decision as programmed and non-programmed decision. He has utilized computer terminology in classifying decision. The programmed decision are the routine and repetitive decision for which the organization has developed specific processes. Thus, they involve no extraordinary judgment, analysis, and authority. This is about the program. They are basically devised so that a problem may not be treated as a unique case each time it arises. On the other hand, non-programmed decisions are the one-shot, ill-structured, novel policy decisions that are handled by general problem-solving process. Thus, they are of extraordinary nature and require thorough study of problem. It is in-depth analysis and the solving the problem. They are basically non-repetitive in nature and may be called as strategic decision. Basic and routine decision. Professor George Cartoon has made distinction between basic decision and routine decisions. Routine decisions are of repetitive nature and they involve the application of familiar principles to a situation. Basic or genuine decisions are those which require a good deal of deliberation of new principles through conscious the process. Plant location distribution are some examples of basic decisions. In the next slide we will discuss the remaining types of decision. Policy and operative decision. Policy decisions are important decisions and they involve a change in the procedure, planning, or strategy of the organization. Thus, they are a fundamental character affecting the whole business. Such decisions are taken by the top management. On the contrary, operating decisions are those which are taken by lower levels of management for the purpose of executing policy decisions. They are generally concerned with the routine type of work, hence unimportant for the top management. They mostly relate to decision makers on work and behavior, while policy decision influences the work and behavior of subordinates. Individual and group decisions. Individual decisions are those decisions which are made by one individual, whether owner of the business or by a top executive. On the other hand, group decisions are the decisions taken by a group of managers, or team, committee, ops, or a subcommittee. In individual decision making is still very common because individual decision making is still very common because a large number of businesses are small and owned by a single individual. This is characterized the nature of business in the developing countries. But in joint stock companies, group decisions are common. There are both merits and demerits of each type of decisions. These are the four types of decisions: programmed and non-programmed, and basic and routine decisions. Individual, policy and operative decisions. Individual and group decisions. Techniques of decision making. The following are some of the important decision making techniques. There are two mainly: qualitative techniques and quantitative techniques. Let's see the first. Qualitative decision making techniques. There is a great importance of generating a reasonable number of alternatives so that one can decide upon the better quality items and make better decision. Generating a reasonable number of alternatives is very useful for solving any complex problem. There are following means of generating the alternatives: brainstorming, synthetics, and nominal grouping. Brainstorming. This technique was developed by Alex Osborne and is one of the oldest and best known techniques for stimulating the creative thinking. This is carried out in a group where members are presented with a problem and are asked to develop as many as potential solutions as possible. The members of the group may be experts, may be from other organizations, but the members should be around 6 to 8. The duration of the session may be around 30 minutes to 55 minutes. The premise of brainstorming is that when people interact in a free and excited atmosphere, they will generate creative ideas. The idea generated by one person acts as a stimulus for generating ideas by others. This generation of ideas is contagious and creates an atmosphere of free discussion and spontaneous thinking. The major objective of this exercise is to produce as many deals as possible, so that there is greater likelihood of identifying a best solution. The important rules of brainstorming are as given below. Criticism of prohibited. Freewheeling is always welcome. Quantity is desirable. Combination and improvement as sought. The limitation of brainstorming. The limitation of brainstorming are: it is not very effective when a problem is very complex and vague. It is time consuming. It is very costly. It produces superficial solution. This is synthetics. The technique was developed by William Gordon. It is recently formalized tool of creative thinking. The word synthetics is a Greek word meaning the fitting together of the diverse elements. The basic purpose of synaesthetics is to stimulate novel and even bizarre alternative through the joining together of distinct and apparently irrelevant ideas. Nominal grouping. This was developed by Ander Dilbeg and Andrew van den Van. Nominal group is very effective in situations where a high degree of innovation and idea generation is required. It is highly structured and follows following stage. Quantitative techniques. There are a number of quantitative techniques for decision making that are discussed below. Stochastic methods. In many management decisions, the probability of the occurrence of an event can be assumed to be known, even when a particular outcome is unpredictable. Under this condition of risk, stochastic method will be useful. Actually, stochastic method merely systematize the thinking about assumption, facts and goals that is involved in decision under condition of risk. The three steps are basic to formalizing the factors to be considered in decision involving probability. The decision maker should first lay out in tabular form all the possible actions that seem reasonable to consider and all the possible outcomes of this action. The decision maker must then state in quantitative form a probability distribution projecting chances of each outcome that might result from each act. In this step, it may only be possible to assign probabilities that are reasonable estimates. The key to this step is to state explicitly the various probabilities that might be attached to each outcome situation. Finally, the decision maker must be use some quantitative yardstick of value, usually currency, that measures the value of each outcome.